I am absolutely delighted to be talking to Leonora Langley this morning, author of Let the Souls of Our Children Sing. Hello, Leonora.
Good morning, Samantha. How are you?
Yes, it's been a little bit warm, but I think the weather is on the turn.
Good. I'm glad to hear it because
we're just not used to it, are we?
We're certainly not. We're not built for it.
No, we're not. Now, we're concentrating today on the summer holidays with children breaking up from school. And I believe you've got some brilliant tips and strategies to help the parents out on this one.
Well, I think this year in particular, Sam, there's going to be quite a few parents and carers who might be experiencing panicked flashbacks to lockdown, when they were school closures, the prospect of children being bored, especially if parents have to work and have to juggle running a house and keeping the kids entertained too.
It's not easy, is it?
Well, I think every family, Sam, will have a different perspective on school holidays this summer. There will be some people jetting off to tropical climes, although we don't need to do that at the moment, do we?
No.
For a couple of weeks. Others will be having a staycation, and then there will be some who simply can't afford a holiday away at all. But I think whatever plans parents and carers might have, I think they need to be aware that their children are probably better off with some kind of structure and sticking to a predictable routine, especially those suffering from anxiety and stress, which I think is probably the case of most children these days.
Oh, it's been really, really tough, hasn't it, since the beginning of the lockdown?
It really has. So I think a really good tip for parents is breaking the 6 weeks down into manageable bite-sized chunks, planning ahead with I used to use a wall planner with my son when he was young to highlight some of the fun activities and outings that I had in store, and creating also a wall chart for younger children with stickers for tasks accomplished, which I think can be really positive. And as part of this, I think it can be useful for parents and carers to choose 2 or 3 positive behaviours in their children that they'd like to encourage, and possibly ignore as many of the negative ones as possible.
Now they're breaking up. And when is that? That's coming up shortly now. When are they breaking up?
I think most of the schools are breaking up this Friday.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so another useful thing, I think, Sam, for parents is to look at their own behaviour to help improve their communication with their children. It's hard for parents to admit that they might be needing a little bit of help as well as their children. But I think if they look at their language and the tone of their voice, I think that really helps in communicating with their children. With my son, I always try to express what I did want rather than what I didn't want. So emphasizing, what you do want rather than what you don't want from them. The difference between using I statements and you statements to create different emotional reactions can be very useful. I think if you use a you statement, you must do this, implies that the child is personally responsible for something, which can trigger feelings of blame, criticism, and shame, as opposed to using I statements, which is a more positive way for the parents to share their feelings in a non-blaming, non-critical, and non-shaming way.
Now, this really does need to be a fun time for family, though, isn't it?
Of course it does. The emphasis must be on fun, because we've had so much the opposite, haven't we, in the last few years? I think trying in this age of double-edged sword of social media, one of the greatest challenges, of course, for parents and carers is to try and keep their children away from the screen and outdoors, having more fun, possibly on a nature walk or maybe experiencing forest bathing. It can be a precious time for peace, reflection, and inspiration. Of course, people, with a bit of money to spare can enroll them into a sports school, a swimming course, or a performing arts production, which I think can be great for those who have the financial means, as I said. Otherwise, odd days out to the beach, maybe to a water park, a boat trip, having a picnic or visiting a farm or garden centre can also be quite stimulating. But of course, some parents can't even afford that sort of thing. So, simply burning off energy in the safety of a garden can offer younger children endless hours of fun and, of course, much less financial outlay. So maybe creating an obstacle course, a pop-up play tunnel, providing a painting easel or whiteboard, dressing up rail or fancy dress, something like that. Even a paddling pool, particularly in this dreadfully extreme weather. I used to put a sheet over the washing line to create a tent for my son, with chairs either side. And he used to love that. He used to spend hours hiding under the tent or playing with his mates. So, and sometimes I used to he used to set up an impromptu shop or cafe, and he used to get his mates to come and, buy something from his shop or his cafe.
It's good to give them a goal, isn't it? Then they've got something to, a bit of drive to go to.
Definitely. I know for the older ones, Sam, they might want to improve their cooking skills. So you could get them on the road with a recipe that they like, or keeping a journal during the holiday, and possibly developing their drawing or photography skills to illustrate it. It gets them right away from their school routine, which is such now an exam factory, and they need to get away from that pressure pot as much as they can during the school holidays.
Now, it's without a doubt the parents, a lot of those parents will be looking back and feeling anxiety when they think back when the lockdown started and they were trying to homeschool and all those sorts of things.
Definitely. I suppose on an emotional level, Sam, all of us over the last 2 years, it's been a traumatic and unsettling time for everyone. So we all need to be sensitive to each other's mental health issues more than ever. I think it can be really useful for parents and carers to set aside times for intentional conversations with their children, where they're actively listening to them and giving them an opportunity to reflect back how they're feeling. I think a huge part of being a good enough parent is to be an emotional anchor for their children so they don't feel rudderless. But I do think in this age, actually, sometimes the children also have to support the parents.
Yes.
It's a rather strange phenomenon. I know it really shouldn't be that way. But, I do think that it's a sort of reciprocity now between the two. Because, as I say, we've all suffered undue stress, pressure, and probably resulting depression and all the other things that go with it. I think for little ones, some good ways of dealing with stress and anxiety can be a simple stress ball, getting hold of a stress ball, meditating, breathing, and yoga techniques, as well as emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you've heard of that. It involves tapping on the body's energy meridians to dampen down the amygdala and help children to get in touch with their inner thoughts and feelings.
All right.
It's all about children and adults feeling like a human being rather than a human doing, which is obviously what's happening a lot in schools. Young children, I think, should be encouraged to write down their worries and put them into a box, jar, or envelope, or even create a specific calm jar. It's like a homemade snow globe using water and glitter, which, definitely, it sounds a bit weird, I know, but it can reduce anxiety. You shake the jar and watch the glitter go to the bottom, which can be very calming for a child, and maybe even for an adult too. Younger children can also benefit, I think, from having a worry doll to share their worries with, and they place it under their pillow before they go to sleep. And by the morning, the doll, I've heard this definitely works, has usually helped them to overcome their worries. So, it is a really challenging time, this 6-week period, because we've only just really come out of lockdown. And it does honestly feel like a mini lockdown again, I think, for some people.
I think you're right there. I really do. Now, children do get bored easily, don't they? And also, when they break up, they don't always get to see their friends and mates, do they?
No, that's very true. In the environment of school, obviously, they see a very wide range of friends and mates. And they love that. I think that's the thing they love most about being at school. But I think most children have one or two friends from school that they get together with in the holidays. And that's always such a lovely thing. I think that honestly is the most important connection for children in this day and age, is the friendships they form.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Especially the younger they are, and they form those friendships, which is rather beautiful.
It is rather beautiful. And of course, the whole of childhood should be beautiful, I think. It's the carefree and careless rapture of childhood. But I think somewhere along the line, I don't know how it's happened, but over the decades, I definitely feel that children are under an awful lot of more stress and anxiety. I think it's 1 in 6 children now who have an identifiable mental issue, and 12.3% have special needs. But to be honest with you, Sam, in my experience as 30 years as a teacher and 15 as a counsellor, I believe in today's society that nearly all children suffer from a special need to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah, there are some deep problems there, which it would be really nice if we have found a good way of sorting through those, really. Now, the parents, I do feel so for the parents as well, because 6 weeks and trying to, perhaps go to work and you've got to take it in turns with perhaps your partner or whatever, and entertaining the children, and what with all the shopping and running around and everything like that, it can be pretty miserable. But I think we've got to encourage people or parents to look at it in such a way that it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be, making memories and doing things with your children.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sam. It is a time for memory making. I look back on my childhood. It's the holidays I think I remember more favourably than probably being at school. Far less pressure. I think it's an opportunity for children definitely to learn new creative skills, to be creative, imaginative, to have maybe dream about something that they'd like to do and work towards it, in some way or other. I think it's a lovely thing. But there honestly will be parents who have to work, which is a bit difficult to juggle it all. And they're the ones probably who need the most help, in a sense. If, they can get a friend to look after the children just one afternoon a week, I think it really helps.
But not only that, they do lean on the grandparents too.
They do. But of course, there are some grandparents who just simply don't want that role, which I think is a bit sad, because I hear from all the grandparents that I know that it is a joy to look after your grandchildren. And, you can enjoy the moment. It's coming to an end at some point within a few hours, and then you can give them back. It's knowledge that you can't give them back, I think, that puts pressure on. When we undertake parenting, Sam, I don't think we always understand exactly what we're taking on. It can be a lifetime's commitment. This arbitrary age of 18, when they're meant to be grown up and leave home, doesn't seem to be really happening anymore. So I think we do have to think very seriously when we think about having children, that of the total commitment, especially in the pressures of modern living, that we have to make.
Leonora, it's been lovely talking to you, but can you just sum up and just tell us, I know you are the author of Let the Souls of Our Children Sing. Could you just just tell us a little bit what that's about?
Okay, so I wrote it. I was inspired when I was very young, when I first became a teacher in my 20s, when I saw how vulnerable children were. They were virtually at the mercy of their parents and teachers, and I wanted to give them a voice. But it took me several decades later before I actually put pen to paper, Sam. And after my 30 years as a teacher, 15 as a counsellor, and of course the obvious learning that goes on when you're a parent, all contributed to me feeling that I was ready to write this book. And the book basically is about the emotional well-being of our children. I believe that it's just as important as academic life. And, I think in schools, we're putting so much emphasis on academia. You've got to get an A star. Well, why? You've got to get 10 GCSEs to, be successful in life. Well, I've known people successful who haven't got that many GCSEs. Sometimes it's your soul journey that you need to fulfill, and it actually transcends your school experience. So many kids feel that if they fail at school, their life is over. But that's just simply not true. It's just a small proportion of their life. And I think that they can still have a wonderful life, even if they've struggled at school. And they're going to be people who are dyslexic, dyspraxic, all sorts of special needs, where they simply find it very difficult to access the school life. So I think there needs to be much more emphasis on the soul development at school, or the emotional development, far less emphasis on cognition and logic, because it can be counted and measured, and far more on the other stuff that I've just described, and certainly more emphasis, or an equal emphasis, between the arts and the sciences. I think it's all a bit top heavy at the moment, more science based. So that's basically a synopsis of my book. It's available in all good bookshops in paperback from Amazon and Austin Macaulay, my publishers, in paperback and ebook, at a very reasonable price, because I wanted to make it accessible to everyone. And I've done an awful lot of radio interviews now, including a few with you.
Yeah.
And so all of those interviews on a wide range of subjects covered in my book are available to listen to on Facebook and YouTube.
Wonderful. Leonora, it's been so interesting talking to you again, as always. And we do need to focus on listening to our children and letting them have their say.
I definitely think letting them reflect back, vitally important. It goes such a long way, and it doesn't cost you anything, just a little bit of patience and time.
You get so much more bonding.
Absolutely. It's the bonding and the attachment that's so needed in children's lives. It's that emotional anchor stuff that I talk about. Otherwise, they can feel rudderless without the parent as an emotional anchor.
And let's hope the parents are going to have a lovely time with their children and having a real good fun time and making memories.
Definitely. I wish everybody, all your listeners, a wonderful summer holiday, both the parents, the carers, and the children, all of them. Take care. Lovely to talk to you, Sam.
And you. Bye-bye.
Bye.